Hi everyone, it's Jack from Jack's English, and today we're going to go back to about time. So we're going to look at a short but romantic clip today and hopefully learn some useful grammar and some British vocabulary as well. So let's get started. As always, let's watch the clip first and then we'll see what we can learn from it.
But even if you didn't have a nice face, and even if you had absolutely no hair, because of some bizarre medical reason, I'd still adore you.
Okay, let's start simple today with the vocabulary bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre is a very common word in British English, so I wanted to teach it to you. Tim said, because of some bizarre medical reason.
Because of some bizarre medical reason.
So, firstly, the meaning of this is simply very strange or weird. It has exactly the same meaning as those words, and it's a very flexible word. Now, before I show you some examples, I just want to point out this here, the I, is not I, it's actually the schwa sound. You can see my other video about the schwa. So this is not bi, it's b. Bizarre. Bizarre. So don't say bizarre, it's bizarre. So let's take a look at some examples. There was some bizarre behavior at work today. Bizarre behavior. Some very strange behavior. That was a bizarre movie you recommended. Again, strange or weird movie. It has exactly the same meaning. So bizarre is very common in British English, and we use it in so many situations, you know, bizarre book, movie, situation, behavior. There's so many cases, even bizarre person. So try using that next time you want to say strange or weird. So that's our first thing that we're going to learn today, the word bizarre. Okay, so let's get into the main part of today's lesson. What I want to look at with you today is the use of even if. Now, this is what Tim used a lot in this one clip. And I get a lot of questions from my students about even if, even when, and even though. Now, I will make a video about that whole subject in the near future so that you can understand better. I think it's a very interesting lesson. But for today, let's just focus specifically on Tim's use of even if. So before we look at that, I want to point out something about this example. Let's read it first. Even if you didn't have a nice face, and even if you had absolutely no hair, I'd still adore you. Now, as I said, I want to point something out first. Notice, didn't, it's past, had, past, and then here, would. It's I'd, which is the contraction of I would. This means it must be the second conditional. Now, don't worry too much about that, but when we study this together now, just keep in your mind that this is an imagined situation now, which is why we use second conditional. It's the opposite of reality. So just keep that in mind. So what does even if mean? Even if means, as you can see here, that something is surprising and it's against what we expect. So if we look at this example, we have two situations, two conditions. Even if you didn't have a nice face, so not a nice face, you had absolutely no hair, so this girl has not a nice face and absolutely no hair. What do we expect in that situation? We expect that he's not attracted. That's what we expect. That's probably the normal case, that he's not attracted to her. But he says, I would still adore you. So it's the opposite of what we expect. So that's Tim's example sentence. That's what he used in that clip just then. And now I'm going to show you some examples so that we can understand how to use even if in our daily lives. So I've prepared some examples. Let's take a look at them now. But before we look at the whole example, let's use these to compare what's expected and unexpected. So if we look at the first one, even if I won the lottery, I wouldn't buy a house. Now, in this situation, win the lottery, what do we expect? I think we expect that we buy a house, maybe buy a car, maybe go traveling. That's what we expect. But in this example, it's unexpected and it's surprising. So we must use even if. It's the opposite of what we expect. Even if I won the lottery, I wouldn't buy a house. How about the next one? Even if I had more time. Well, let's think about this situation, have more time. What do? Probably we use it to study or exercise or do something productive. But this is the opposite of what we expect. So even if I had more time, I wouldn't study for class. So it's the opposite of what we expect. This is always the case when we use even if. Now, as I said to you before, there are a lot more things to talk about, even if, even when, and even though, but we're just going to focus on this one today. And so hopefully you can understand it in this context. And even if means something is surprising, it's against expectation, or we can say it's the opposite of what we expect. That's everything I have for you today. We learned two things today. Firstly, the word bizarre, which is a very British sounding word, and it means to be very strange or weird. The next thing we learned was even if, and this was to introduce a situation and action that are the opposite of what we expect and surprising. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. As always, please leave any comments below, and if you want to try your own example, I'll check it for you. Have a great week and see you soon.